Hello and welcome to Mr. Clark After Dark, everyone. My name is Lucas Clark and I am a certified educator with Alberta Education and the Alberta Teachers Association. All conversations and interactions exchanged is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. In no way does the content discussed intend to be in violation of the ATA Code of Conduct or meant to target any individual student, teacher, or to belittle or demean the profession in any way. If you have something that you would like me to discuss or have a story of your own to share, please reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com. You can also send a direct message to me on Instagram at Mr. Clark After Dark. Hope you enjoy the show, and please do not forget to subscribe. And now, on to the show. Hope you all enjoy. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mr. Clark After Dark. On this part 2 of the conversation with Greg Pollard, we discuss teaching students in lower streams and teaching them not to think that they are stupid. Almost moving to another province, as Greg did with Prince Edward Island just last year. Channeling his inner nerd in the classroom. How presenting is not quite the gulag, but is definitely still tiring at times. Not placing your own academic expectations on your struggling students. How I have unwittingly emulated my high school social studies teacher in more ways than one. The contradiction of changing your demeanor once you decide to pursue a career in administration. How it is not a flex to spend all your time at your school. The demand of coaching varsity athletics. Learning to be yourself on the job, and much more. Thank you all for tuning in and hope you enjoy the show.
One's
I think
cabinet makers.
Yeah, the idea that you don't get a liberal arts or like a university education, that you're not, quote unquote, not smart, is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
But that's what a lot of people think.
Yeah, and all of this is like in the -2 classes I teach, I'm like, you guys aren't stupid.
I tell them that too.
I hate it when they get into, are we doing this assignment because it's -2? Yeah. I'm like, well, no, like it is considered like an quote unquote easier or like less intense stream, but you can literally do 10-1 next semester.
Yeah.
Or 20-1 next semester. Like it's not like you're that far removed from.
No.
It's just because it's just where you were put in the stream, and I'm like, especially this semester at my -2, get them like half of you should be in -1.
Yeah.
Like you're actually solid.
Yeah,
and so the idea that, but I always think like they kind of start teaching themselves like their own like negative self story, where you're gonna lock yourself into how you define yourself now.
Yeah. And
the -2 kind of connotation, and I don't know. I don't even know where I'm like trying to ask there, but it's just, it bugs me that that's the mentality.
It is. Yeah. I love my -2 kids.
Yeah, and they're usually the most personable.
Yes.
Yeah, I love
them. not necessarily -1 very like strict and like a lot of pressure in -1 where it's less.
You have higher temporary expectations.
Yeah,
because there is a higher demand in some ways. But
I love them. I'm actually, so when I was going to leave the city and then 2 weeks later I decided not to because I got to leave, right? And then I came back and they said, well, look, you still have a job in Fort McMurray, you just don't know where you're going to be.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
what was that like? That was probably super stressful.
At first they said, well, as of right now, like there's a grade 5 job somewhere. And I'm like, no, I guess I'm going to have to go drive a truck or something.
Yeah. Oh, really? So you were like on the fence though?
But I just waited and then, jobs come up. We still have teachers.
We have like 3.
But then they said, well, you're going to teach a computer science class. And I was like, okay, like I'm kind of good with computers, but I don't know what to teach.
Yeah.
And they said, you got to teach social studies. And I was like, and it turned out English they threw at me too. And I was like, oh my God, it's been so long.
The dog's breakfast.
10-2 English, 10-2 social. Yeah. Like, oh my God, it's been so long. And I don't even know the curriculum and stuff. But it was so nice to go back in the classroom. Yeah. Last year, so nice. It's because the gym has its pros and cons, but it's chaos.
Yeah, because it's not really like the classroom, I guess, no, and it's like official or like a formal sense.
Manage all these people, like even teachers who have to cover for like phys ed teachers who are out. They say like this is the worst job.
Phys ed is not a gravy gig.
No.
Subbing hated phys ed.
Yes,
I hated phys ed.
Chaos,
like they're not gonna listen to you. Like, well, it was all right as a sub. It was just it's either classes had 39 or they had 15.
Yeah. And both suck.
Yeah.
You can't do anything with
No,
15?
you can't do anything with either. And then even like when I was you and I were split in that class, it was just, there's 2 classes. We've got 670 kids in here. I'm like, and then you got 15 playing at a time because you only got 3. And it was just like, you do what you can with what you have. But
that's what Keelan and I are doing first block with them.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, and you know what? They all love it.
Yeah.
Even like was it Thursday? Last school day. Anyway, it was their last day of basketball, and all the volleyball girls were sick of basketball.
Yes.
But we divided them into teams, and they played.
Yeah.
They just did. They came on at their shifts, and they left. When their shift was done, they sat in the bleachers, and they looked miserable.
90 minutes is a long time.
It's a long time.
For phys ed, too.
They looked miserable on the bench, kind of looked miserable coming on, but then they'd play their shift and go off. And then towards the end of class, I went over to them all. I said, like, thanks, girls.
Yeah.
I said, I know you did not want to do this today. You're miserable, but you did it. You know, you actually worked hard on your shifts. And I said, thank you. And then, I think it made them happy. It was nice. Right?
Well, because it's the phys ed thing is hard. So why did you like the classroom kind of going back into it? Like, what did you miss about it, I guess?
Well, like I say, I have my nerdiness about me about some things, right? Like whether it's movies or like history. I love history. Mm-hmm. I watch documentaries all the time, and I think it's fascinating. And
I don't know how you don't. Like, and
I
so,
know.
So how do you find your students like do you find your students engaged in your social classes?
So it's a funny question because the ones I have now, I only have 20 kids in that class, which is crazy. Yeah. But they literally sit there staring at me with blank faces for 80 minutes. They won't speak to me. And I'm up there teaching, and I think I'm telling them really cool and interesting things, and they won't speak to me. There's one girl in the corner every time she puts her hand up. Like,
it's like always like a half
anybody else but her. Like, anybody have an idea? But then I'm like, I make fun of them. I'm like, guys, like, but then I talk to them like in other classes. I teach them, and I was like, you know, why don't you guys talk? And like, well, no, just the way we are. And then, but they tell me, but it's my favorite class, Mr. Pollard. Like, what do you mean it's your favorite class? You sit there and look at me, and I love it. I love the way you teach it. It's interesting. Like, well, yeah. So
I love
that's a win, I guess, right? Yeah, if they just like me talking to them and explaining things.
But that can also be exhausting
it is
because people think, okay, you only talk about history for 80 minutes. That's not work.
Yeah.
But when you're like trying to present and garner interest and like you're looking around the room and you're posing questions, it's just, again, not like it's the gulag, but it's taxing.
Yeah.
Right. And so especially when you do that 4 times.
I know.
Because I have 4 blocks of social, and like my afternoon is the exact same class twice. Like I got back, and I'm pros and cons, I think, with like having that kind of a schedule. I think like in the future, like tossing an option in there, I think could be fun. But again, but at the same time, I've even said I would rather teach 4 blocks of social than 3 blocks and have a new course to prepare for.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense because I almost like, you know what? I like talking about it. I like teaching it, and I know it to a certain degree. And like the more I teach it, the better I'm going to get at it. So if I can do it another run, why not?
Yeah.
But
also like going back in the classroom, they're sitting in desks.
Teaching
phys ed, it takes you a couple months before you know names because you do attendance with them, they're all running around, but then they're in desks and it's more structured consistent and organized. So that was nice. But then also so last year I taught English and social, and most of the kids were all afternoon was English social, and most of the kids were in the same 2 classes. But talking about the 10-2 stigma, I told them, like, especially in English class, I said, guys, I'm going to teach you as best I can how not to look stupid when you have to write things. Like, you know, you have to at least know how to write well so people won't assume that you're an idiot. And like, so like, and I give the example of like social media and stuff. Like when I see somebody post something with glaring misspelling and stuff, my thought immediately is that person's an idiot.
Yeah.
How do you not know how to spell that? How do you screw that up? So I told my 10-2, like, you guys might not think you're smart, but you are.
Yeah.
But I need you to understand, like, the basics. I need you to be able to, like, say something in writing and say it well.
And understanding what, like, written communication, how it should sound different than how you talk.
Yeah. Like, if you're if you're applying for a job or whatever, like, if you
cover letters are everything.
Yeah. But if you sound smart,
well, unless you reach out to the principal yourself. But.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think they responded well to that, because I think we said, like, they think they see value in it, but they are. So, like, let's do this. Even to write an essay in social 10-2, right? Tell them, like, essays aren't hard, guys. There's a format. You follow this format and structure your ideas fine. And I showed you some of the essays. Like, blew me away how good these essays are. Well, like, and 10-2, but
I always find there's resistance to it's like, well, the format's stupid. It's like, well, no, like, we have it formatted for a reason so that you don't sound like an idiot.
Yeah.
So you actually have an order of how you, if we both have, like, agreed on rules of kind of how we're going to progress our information, then we know how to read each other. Yeah. Like, that to me is, I find, a lost skill on them. That's actually, because I would say I always struggle trying to relay the value of being a good writer.
Yes.
Because everyone now, and maybe, like, I would say it's across the board, that social probably gets the worst rap of all the subjects in terms of, like, oh, when am I ever going to use this again?
Oh, yeah.
I actually always
need to understand.
But I always kind of come back to, this is the only course that's actually really going to stick with you.
Yes.
Because, like, you're going to go through social media and see what's going on in Israel and Palestine right now.
Why are they fighting? And when did that start?
Well, yeah. And it's like, well, why is my friend's cousin, like, their family, just someone was killed? Like, that's all related to, like, politics and systems and, like, competing ideas and religion, etc. But, and then, not that I want to get into that right now, because I have a pretty minimal understanding of the whole situation myself. But there's never going to be do you remember that chemistry balancing equation from Science 10 when you're 33?
I took chemistry. I couldn't do it right now.
Well, and again, not that I'm obviously, like, I'm not trying to shit on science courses at all. But all I'm saying is, like, it's silly to think that it's something that that will never be relevant.
Yeah, history's not important. Yeah, because it helps you understand, like, the world by looking at history. Right? It helps you understand why things are the way they are.
But even the written part, even like my Dash one students are like, well, I'm doing engineering. Why do I need to care about how well I can write?
Yeah.
Oh, like, if you are coherent in your argumentation, you'll go anywhere, and then you can learn to lead.
Yeah.
If you know how to communicate. That's the part where it's like, okay, maybe you want to go be an engineer. Maybe you'll go make $200,000. But what about the guy who's making $400,000? Who's your boss?
Yeah.
If you ever want to be that guy. And then I'm kind of just tossing numbers and whatever out there, but I do think that's lost somewhere.
I know.
And I don't know if maybe that's all, because I didn't care about writing in high school.
See, I loved it. I was English major. I just loved it. I loved books.
Well, it was like grade 12 was kind of when I decided to go to university.
Yeah.
And then it's when I started, because I upgraded for like a year and a half. So I graduated all -2. So that my whole thing was like, I finished.
Look, success story. Mr. Clark.
So you're feeding my imposter syndrome right now. But like I had 30-2 social with a 63. Then the next semester, I did social 30-1 with an 88.
Wow.
Because I started to give a shit. That was what changed. And like I said, I told the kids, like, I had science 20. I didn't have a 30 level science. And I had to do bio and chem 2030.
Oh my God.
And I had to do English 30-1 at SATE, which I did English 30-2. I think I was low 70s, 95 and 30-1 English. Again, not like trying to flex or like, that's not at all what I'm trying to say, but it was once you actually like, but one thing I have noticed is that I think I turned it around pretty quickly. Because like my dad had cancer in grade 11, so that was, I think, the reason I withdrew from a lot of stuff. Which is, I think,
exactly.
Well, looking back, I was like, oh, I was lazy.
When you're dealing with that, right?
I think I didn't care, but my thing was, I almost maybe have overcorrected and almost expecting too much from some of the -2 students I do have.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Because it's like, okay, well, if I can do it, and I think I'm an idiot because of my imposter syndrome, then you can obviously do it. Yeah. But maybe sometimes it's not always the case that it's like the same. Because I think if looking back and kind of looking at my students now, if I had like a 90% in 30-1 social, I must have possessed some of the competencies, but just wasn't applying them.
Yeah.
But if you don't possess the competencies at all, that's something that you can't just expect someone to have. So that's something I've channeled in myself of like, don't expect too much of a turnaround. And maybe they'll turn it around when they're 22.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not 18, like where that was kind of like my moment, I guess, where I kind of switched up a bit. But yeah.
Yeah. I had a kid in social studies just last week. He said to me, he's in my guitar class too, actually. He's like, Pollard, I've never gotten above 65 in social studies and all junior high.
Yeah.
I said, oh, that's too bad. He's like, and I have a 90 in your class right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. Like, that's awesome. Like, I don't know. Like, that's good, I guess. And maybe just sometimes it's teachers, right? Sometimes it's the teacher you have. Sometimes, like, I remember thinking back when I was in school, I was an asshole to some teachers.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say peep to other teachers. It's just like,
that's true.
I don't know. It's a relationship or whatever, or it's the respect thing. Like, it's a huge part of it. When they say about like relationships are more important than anything else, I kind of makes me annoyed because then they say make sure you cover all this curriculum in this short time, but no, so spend some time getting like but it really is right. Like you're never going to cover all the curriculum in the time you have. But if you can build a relationship with a kid, they will work for you.
They'll buy into you as someone they can trust. Yeah, because I think one thing now, especially with your kids who think school is stupid, like they just don't want to be here, they'll at least like, if for nothing else, they'll do it for you. Yeah. That's not nothing. Yeah. But like they wouldn't have done that at all if it wasn't for. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Last year I had in my class all the hockey boys. And I know through roughing, right? So it's connection. Yeah. Same thing. I wouldn't even have to be on them. I'd just look at them like, okay, boys, like you have to get that into me right now. And they're okay, Pollard, like I will. But it was like a relationship kind of thing where they were doing it for me because they like me and like it's just we had that in common.
Well, they also don't want to like sour the relationship.
That's right. Yeah.
Because it's like I'll be more on your case. Yeah. If you're not getting your stuff done. Yeah. So that's actually interesting you bring that up because when you were kind of going through school, like you make the decision to be a teacher in grade 12?
Grade 12 was my grade 12 English teacher. He was just awesome. Okay.
Mr. Nick.
Yeah. But he was a hard ass too. Yeah. But I don't know, just made you love it. We did studied like.
So he actually inspoed the English major too.
Yeah. I was always a pretty good writer. Not so much math science.
Neither was I.
And stuff, but it wasn't still not that great. Right. But I liked reading and I found writing. I could just kind of write an essay pretty easily. I took his class and I got really, really good marks in it. 90s something, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I was like, I want to be like Mr. Nick.
So it wasn't even English. Like you kind of wanted to just be
partly, like I wanted. My thought was, man, I'd love to be an English teacher like him. Like he's just the way he does it, and we read a book. We had to do a project on a book of our choice, and he gave us a whole bunch of books to do, and a bunch of the class took Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, this tiny little novel. Yeah. And my buddy Scott, he's a lawyer now. Yeah. He's like, Greg, there's this book called Tom Jones. It was written in like 18 something.
Okay, yeah.
And it's like, 5 inches thick. Okay. It's a novel. He's like, let's do that one. And I was like, Scott, man, I can't. Like, are you crazy? Yeah. But we did it. And it's one of the best books I've ever read. It's basically like a Playboy in the late 1800s. And it's so funny, man. It was amazing. But like we read this book and I took notes on like every page and stuff. And like Mr. Nick couldn't believe it.
It didn't feel like work though.
No. Yeah. I was like, see. Yeah. And then we made like a little movie about it and stuff. We did
that's cool.
Like a talk show kind of thing where the characters came on and
that's sick actually.
Yeah, it was good. But yeah, it just made me love it, I guess. And
like an interview. That's actually really,
yeah,
I think you can translate it into a lot of projects.
you could.
I like, well, I
It's like
immediately
Johnny
thought,
Carson kind of like talk show, and then the characters came on and talked, and we did the monologue, which was like one of the comments from Mr. Nick was like, it's a little bit crude because the whole book is about him being like a playboy and so it was really good though.
that's how, well, you could, getting into the character, that's when you have to learn how to be that character.
Yeah.
So you're going to find, because I just started an Industrial Revolution project, but it's pretty like basic, so I tried to change it up. I said you can make an Industrial Revolution crime scene and be like, what would Adam Smith think about that?
Oh, that's cool.
What would Marx think about that? Because it's like, oh, they need to rise up, or like, oh, it's just a consequence of the system. Well, whatever. But I'm thinking, like, you could do the crime scene, but then interview witnesses.
That's a good idea.
That could be like a cool kind of piggyback onto that, right?
17 yeyears of experience.
All the wisdom coming. But no, I like that though. And because it's funny you say, because my thing was phys ed teacher. When I decided, so it's kind of funny. The moment I decided to be a teacher it's kind of shameful a little bit. Because I was taking Mr. Henneberry's sports performance in Westwood. And so I guess my kind of the societal narrative, like, oh, teachers make $30,000 a year. Mm-hmm. That was kind of what I thought in grade 12.
Yeah. Well,
no,
jump in after.
Yeah. But he was telling me, he's like, I did 6 years of school. So you can make up to like $110,000 a year. And I was like,
yeah.
Oh,
I know. Like,
I was like, that doesn't
money, but like we do okay now.
No,
I do okay now.
It does seem a lot better now. And it's not that I ever like wouldn't have done teaching for the money. And I think actually at first, because he mentioned something that he got paid as a teacher and a trainer. But I think what he meant was he's a teacher and has a kinesics degree. So it was like the 2 degrees. You have more years of education, you get paid more.
Yes.
Overall,
like 6 years. Yeah.
So my kind of assumption coming into teaching, even after the conversation, was, if you teach like history, you get paid less. So I wasn't aware of how the scale works, but I was like totally okay with that.
It's a classic joke about phys ed teachers.
Yes. It's like we get paid.
Yeah. In school. Yeah.
Well, and so it was funny because when I went and talked to Conrad Drover the other day, he's like, I actually think Lucas is the smartest teacher in the world because he just coaches cross country where people just run in circles all day and then just talks about history. So he actually has found a way to not actually work. It's going to be in the intro when that comes up. But yeah, it was pretty funny. But, so that was a moment where it was like, I could do something I think I know I would enjoy, but I'm not going to be looking at through the couch cushions for change. Yeah. That was kind of the moment where I was like, okay, I can kind of see myself. And again, not that I'm like in it for no one's like in it for the income or in it for the outcome, not the income. That's kind of like the other thing. But again, whatever. Yeah. But then it was all phys ed. That's what I wanted to do. And it was evacuation happened. That's when I was upgrading. So I had graduated high school before evacuation and I was upgrading and I ended up attending a high school in Airdrie for 2 months. And my teacher there, he actually was also a ref. Whoa, that's super weird. That is super weird.
You know what? A lot of referees, hockey referees anyway, are teachers. Because I used to teach the ref clinic also to kids, and I'd go to like Red Deer for like our big meetings. Okay. And it was
so do you know who Scott Sharoon is?
That rings a bell.
Yeah.
But I don't.
But he reffed the Memorial Cup when it was in Red Deer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. It definitely rings a bell, but I can't say that I do.
So he taught me social.
Oh, wow.
And I remember like watching him lecture and just being like, I could do this.
Oh, there you go.
And I sat right next to him in the back. But it was also different because I was upgrading. I was a year older than everyone.
Oh, yeah.
So in talking to him and like how we kind of developed our relationship for that 6 weeks I had him, it was a little bit like this kid's already an adult.
Yeah.
Because I was almost 19.
Yeah.
So because it was the end, like I did a full school year of upgrading at Westwood.
Wow.
After. So this was May, obviously. Yeah. So I'm like almost 19 years old.
Wow.
And I had zero shame. people were like, oh, like, why don't you just go? I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to upgrade courses, put my head down. I'll figure it out. Yeah. It's either I pay $500 a course at Keanu or I just go back to my high school for a full year. Yeah. That to me. And so, yeah, because I remember even telling him one day, I was like, but I think I want to try and do social instead. And now it's weird that because I remember he left to go ref. First off, that's very weird. That's kind of the exact track I'm now going down.
Right, yeah. There you go. But like you think about teaching and refereeing is you're dealing, teaching phys ed specifically, but also teaching other stuff. You're dealing with a lot. You're like teaching phys ed, you're dealing with chaos and trying to figure it all out, and you have to think fast. And same as a referee. You're dealing with like a chaotic environment that you need to have control over. But let it happen too.
And not be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You kind of got to let things happen and react as they come. Like you can't like.
And like the way you interact with some players, you have to figure that out. And like some things you let go and some things you really hammer down on depending on the situation. It's teaching.
The subjectivity part is for sure kind of like the art of how you respond is kind of present in both, but
because there's lots of really smart people who are not good teachers, and there's lots of really smart referees who just don't know how to manage a game.
And you'll have professors in university who are geniuses, but are the driest human beings and have like no people skills at all. Because I do think that's one of the things that I like. What do you think the skills are the teachers have? Because I always like, what is a skill? Like, that's kind of like this little internal, I'm like, if I had to teach someone skills of how to teach or like how to go through university, like what is actually meant by that word?
Oh my God. I don't know.
Like people skills. What's a people skill?
Skills, like, well, you have to know how to interact with a lot of different types of people. Yeah, you can't, how, you treat that group of kids one way because, that's what they need. And you need to be able to deal with different people where a lot of jobs you don't have to, like you just deal with a customer kind of thing. Yeah. But you're dealing with angry people and sad people. And
that's when I think it's almost the more that you deviate away from like your traditional teacher mold and kind of like not to be cheesy, but to like channel yourself into it. Yeah. And be authentic, it's going to make that easier.
I think that's
because if you're putting on a teacher front,
they see it.
They're gonna like they're gonna call you out immediately if you are. But what were you saying?
Well, I think that's the biggest change for me in the last number of years. I just act like myself around them, and I don't know. I don't try to like pretend or like put on a show. I just act like myself and. And I think they see that and I think they respect it.
But I've had a few conversations with some admin and a couple other schools, just like asking when you decided you wanted to be a VP, how did you change? Yeah. Because it's almost like a weird, like you can't really interact with people the same way. Because you are kind of like going to be their boss.
Be careful what you say.
Like you're being a bit more like maybe not on edge is the wrong phrasing. But isn't that kind of like if your authenticity is what got you to become a VP and now you're kind of going to more of this like VP administrator mold, isn't that almost counterproductive?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I don't know. Is that...
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of just like thinking out loud there. But I don't know what the...
Yeah, I guess just yourself, but it's not only just in teaching. I like to think, and I might be wrong, but I like to think I can like recognize when I'm talking with people, whether they're authentic or not. Like I think I have a good sense of it. Like,
so what
this person's just full of shit. Like I don't, the way they talk and like, it seems like they're trying to like, when they speak,
they're trying to like read you a manual or something.
Yeah. And I just, seems to me like I have that sense. I don't know though.
Well, it's just not that deep.
No,
like I don't know why we need to. I don't know. I find like there is a little bit of. Do you think there's like competition in teaching? Or do you think there should be more? Like, what is the teaching competition?
Well, I don't know. I guess I said for sure, and now I'm questioning.
Yeah, but I'm just like
you want, like, a lot of teachers love the praise and acknowledgement of what they're doing. They love that, right? Like, oh, I'm in the building all the time, all weekends and stuff.
Yeah,
And
I always find that a weird flex.
Yes,
it's a weird expectation to hold for yourself.
Yeah, like, working so hard, but I don't know.
Well, so someone said to me the other day, because I was here, again, I was here late, but no, I was here like, I think it was still like 4:45 or something. Like, it wasn't anything too serious. It's just like an hour after school, and someone said, they're like, "Oh, you usually don't stay this late." I was like,
yeah.
Why are you watching? Yeah, I was like, why are you watching? I was like, I don't know. I guess weird. I don't know. I would never like keep tabs.
And even like talk about people going from teaching to admin. I've heard people say before, like, when people move, like, oh, why are they going to be admin? They never like did anything at the school. They never like coached, and they never helped out. I'm like, do you have to? Like, is that, you can't be admin if you didn't like give up all your.
Well, it's like you need to kill yourself to be promoted.
Yeah.
Which is like weird.
Yeah. I mean, just, he was going to be a good admin. He's a good guy. He's a smart guy or girl.
But I don't know how you would, because kind of one of the reasons why I brought up how it kind of changed you being as a dad is like, obviously there were certain things that you had to cut. Because you now have literally another life to take care of. But my kind of question was, if those things were possible to be cut once you had a kid, couldn't those have been cut before? Yeah. Right?
And you know what? I think that's a really good point. We're getting deep into Greg Pollard second.
If I'm prying too much.
Right? No, it's fine. It makes me think, because I think, talk about the imposter syndrome, imposter complex, especially coming here where I'm coming into a school to be an AD, huge school, and there's a lot of pressure. So I wanted to make sure that I did it right and that, like, not screwing up. So I was putting all my time into making sure it was good. I don't know. And then,
well, because I remember my grandpa said to me once, he's like, he made a joke. He's like, if you're, you're not going to get trouble if you're at work. Yeah. It's like, as long as you're there, it's like, no one's going to say anything to you, because at least you could be there doing nothing, but you're there.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I guess those years I worked really hard, but it's also, I guess, I always wanted to do my job well.
Yes. And all of this isn't to say you should never do extracurriculars and you should never do anything extra and you should never try. That's not at all I just think that
you can overdo it.
Well, I just think it's strange that whenever you do more, that just becomes the new expectation. Right. And when you walk it back, that's guilt, pressure,
now he's not
ostracized. And it's like, oh, like he doesn't care about the school. He doesn't care about his whatever. That's the part that I think it's like lobsters in a bucket. It's like they're or crabs in a bucket. They crawl out, but they're pulled back down by the other crab. That's like, well, we're turning up the temperature on ourselves in a certain sense, because like, once we kind of stop that, then everyone else will stop expecting the same thing on us, right? Yeah, I'm not blaming teachers for this either, but that has kind of been a like feedback loop that just kind of keeps progressing.
I think about my daughter going to school now, and like a couple of times where like they didn't do like an event, or like the school dance was canceled or whatever, and my first part of my brain, like, oh my God, like that sucks so much. They're not doing this for the kids. But then I think, well, you know what? They're probably doing a lot of other stuff, and they're probably too busy, and, you know, they probably just can't do it because they're teachers. And I'm like, it's, you know.
Yeah. And I find the lack of the people who aren't teachers that complain, but they also don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, then what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand So have you ever had have you found like dealing with parents to be a difficult kind of process for you? Like, has that changed? Like, because I have to say, so far, I haven't really had any major issues. And I don't know if maybe it's socials, not really the most intense course that they're really expecting. I don't know. Or maybe like I'm pretty straight up with everything.
Yeah.
And I'll usually be I'll always be the first one to say, oh, I'm falling behind or I did something wrong. But like, what do you think with that?
Well, in my first year teaching, I just wasn't communicating well with teachers, and then or with the parents. Sorry, and then parent teacher interviews came along, and like
it's like in year who?
Yeah, no, they came in and said, "Oh yeah, okay, your daughter." Like I brought up my mark book, and your daughter is 33%, and they lost their mind. Why didn't you tell us this? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, I guess we really have to really like often send these emails, and I'm still not great at it sometimes, right?
So would your mark book have been like physical then?
Yeah, I teacher book, but then I also made an Excel sheet, and I did my own formulas and everything in it, so you could enter them in. Yeah, it was awesome. Way easier than power school.
Really?
Well, in ways, power school is good, and then also isn't.
Yeah. So, Mr. Yummy, have you ever had any other crazy stories said to you by some other students in your day?
Oh my God.
Because I've had a few instances where, like, students will just say things to me, and I just, like, I'm literally scratching my head as I'm saying this to you, and I just, there's no filter.
No, I know.
At all. But
that's a tough one because
kind of makes the job funny though.
It's very funny. Part of it's like you're glad that they feel comfortable to talk to you, but then also you're like, am I making them too comfortable so that they can tell me this stuff? Right?
Like what am I giving off
Yeah.
that made you feel like I could just say that, and then I'll just be like,
well, just in this class right here, the last class I had with them, one kid says, Mr. Pollard, I have something really crazy that I want to tell you, but like it's going to get a lot of people in trouble. And I said, okay, Cody, like, if you tell me this, you have to understand that like there's a good chance I'm going to have to tell my like principal, depending on what you tell me. So if you don't think you want me to know that, don't tell me. And he didn't. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I won't then. You know? And I've had those conversations a few times.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Pollard, I have this crazy picture to show you. I'm like, okay, like before you show me what's on your phone there, you have to understand that I might like be legally
obligated to immediately report it to my superior.
Yes, it's like a criminal activity, and so that's a tough one. But it's also like they feel comfortable and just want to tell me. Yeah, it's nice, but
So have you ever considered leaving teaching? Like seriously?
Not seriously, but I've dabbled.
Yeah,
years and years ago, I talked to.
So when? How long into your career?
That would have been 7, 8 years. Not like the 5 that usually people throw out the 5 years, right? Like after 5.
Yeah, that seems to be like a benchmark. I don't really.
It might have been around the same time where I started reffing or so, because I was in my mind frame was I paid $50,000 to get this job, university. I'm working.
I never thought about it like that.
Right?
You paid $50,000 to get a job.
To get a job. And I'm working.
It's actually a crazy way to,
I'm poor by like 3 weeks into the month. I have no money left. I'm working really hard, coaching, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm looking for a part-time job. And my thought was, maybe I just get a full-time better job. You know,
it's disheartening.
People on site, and like I asked them, like, how hard would it be to get on with your company? And they're like, oh, easy. Like, just let me know.
Do you want to start tomorrow?
Yeah, right. And so, but then I, weigh the pros and cons and that kind of thing. I do love teaching. Like I said before, I love it and hate it. Like I love it and hate it.
Well, and so another droverism. He said, sometimes I feel like I'm like society is robbing me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I'm robbing society.
Because like some days you have spirit day.
Like, this is a great day.
Yeah,
like,
my
it was
wife
just a great
will be
day.
like, I tell her what we did today, like a spirit day or something. Like, oh my God, you have the easiest job. I'm like, well, yeah, that
like,
day
just
because
we had one easy day doesn't mean the entire thing is super simple.
Days are very difficult sometimes, and they're like stressful, and like things happen to the kids you teach, and like.
Well, it's like some days in kindergarten you eat cookies and glue stuff, but most days it's like this is pure chaos with 23 kids in this room. Oh, I've always like and so you
school teachers should be paid more than we.
I know.
We work way harder, man. Like
my because sometimes like I'll try to stagger my days where like let's just say now if I'm reffing at 10:15, the next day it's like I'll try to schedule that for like an essay writing
Yes.
day. So it's a little bit easier
Stand
on
in
me,
front
which
of
is,
it.
but it's like you're getting the same level of production from your students, but just you kind of know where your head's going to be at.
Yeah.
So you're trying to plan accordingly. But if you're teaching like kindergarten or elementary, like there is no work block
You
days.
got to be on.
Like you are
You guys
constantly.
get a free class today just to go on your phones. Like kindergartens don't go on their phones. Like
Close the door.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, that's Do you think the pay scale is weird?
The pay scale.
Yeah.
Like that you get incrementally.
Well, that is
money
just
per
like
year.
every grade's the same, but it's I don't know.
Oh
like,
yeah, like it. I'm kind of being sarcastic when they say they should.
No,
pay
and
more, but
I don't
think
know
they
how
would.
you would make it better or worse. And I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt you there, but
No,
yeah.
it's fine. I don't think you could solve it. Like,
Yeah.
how do you solve it?
Like-
I know talked before about like a varsity coach.
Yeah.
It's bonkers how
Months,
much time they
yeah.
put in. Months of 4 days a week
Yep.
plus tournaments.
Like 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's bonkers. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine having a family and doing it. Like, yeah. So like, so almost pay them more, but how do you justify that? Because then you use the example of the play. They're putting it for a bunch of months. They're putting them close to the same amount of hours or
Yeah.
the same amount of hours. Like, pay them more. I don't think you could figure out.
Well,
a
the weird thing is
solution to it.
if you started measuring those outside hours, like it would collapse.
Yeah,
Like the system would collapse.
It would
Like we're already in a shortage. We're already like somewhat struggling. Like the things I've read about the teacher shortage is pretty. There'll be a couple that'll say like, oh, like well, it's just like mostly sub workers that they can't find, et cetera, et cetera. But it is weird that. So this is kind of my workaround. Well, it's technically we're under contract for like 32 hours a week.
Yeah.
So if you
Which
have
isn't a lot necessarily. And
well, like if you have
it's fair.
12 hours of marking and planning on top of that, which usually some weeks you'll have way more marking, some weeks you have almost none.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on the flow of the semester or the year. But like it's a certain degree of that kind of already included in your
in the
contract.
32 hours.
Well, like because you are only quote unquote
yeah.
there for 32.
So call it a 40-hour work week. And
Yeah.
then 8 hours.
Because I know like there's a teacher I've talked to who says like I come in on Sunday for 6 hours.
That's so much.
But they said that they do that because I work like 33 hours a week. So the way I rationalize it is this is the beginning of my work week, but then I get everything done so that all my evenings are free.
Yeah, that's
I'm like,
great.
that's kind of fair where you're kind of actually just kind of treating it like, okay, this is just how I do my job, not that it's like extra time or whatever. But, yeah. But I think that flexibility that it allows you to do that when you can, that's the nice
true.
part of it. Yeah.
That's true. I always said that about teaching phys ed and coaching. You have to be there on those weekends coaching. You don't
Do you ever
have
get
a
coaches
choice.
back?
What's that?
Do you ever get coaches back?
Back.
Like coaches back?
like
Have you ever
sore
heard that
back?
before? Yeah, from standing so much.
Yeah, I've had a bad lower back since I was like 18.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I remember because
Sleep weird, then
I
I
was
can't stand up.
well, I was helping out with football last year, and I was like every night it would get to the point where I was like, man, my back's starting to hurt, and
I
the
was standing up all
the
day.
boys would be like, yeah, you'll get that. He's like, you'll have coaches back soon.
I've
I
never
was
heard
like-
of it, but maybe, yeah, I guess so.
Well, I only say because like, teaching phys ed all day and then coaching,
Yeah.
like you're
And feet all day.
like you're not really like walking or necessarily active,
Yeah.
but you're standing and you're
almost,
in
it's
it.
almost worse. It'd be better if you're moving.
Yes.
Yeah. But I guess so. I had to be there for those practices, and I had to be there at certain times for tournaments.
Yeah.
So that was my extra time. Where you're teaching all English and social, you can do your extra marking time whenever is convenient for you.
Yeah.
Which is better in a lot of ways. Yeah. You're doing as much extra work as the coaches, but it's when it's convenient to you.
Yeah.
Which I guess.
Yeah.
It's hard to find those convenient times. Like I say, it's usually 9:00 at night for me when I start.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even think about that because I guess you literally would have kind of like no waking time.
No.
That you and your kids aren't really awake at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's from 4:00 to 8 or whatever.
All right, Mr. Pollard, I got one more question for you.
Okay.
Okay. So I've ended most of my podcasts so far with this question. I heard a quote once: education is what remains once we forget everything that we learned in school. What is it that you want your students to take away from their time with you specifically? That's kind of outside of the curriculum.
Me specifically?
Yeah. Like, what is it that you like? What values or perspectives are you trying to like leave them with, if nothing else?
Well, that's a tough question.
So I've heard some say like, "Oh, make them like know that they're loved," or sure. Like, "Don't be afraid to learn," or "Don't be afraid to go for what you want." So things like that.
Yeah.
Like you're again kind of cheesy lane, but like actually it's like, what is the purpose? Like, what are we actually trying to put them through 13 years of school? Like, what are we actually trying to instill? That's not just like do this curriculum document. You don't
remember the things you learn. I would probably have to say it sounds really cheesy too when I think about it.
Just go for it.
But you have to learn how to be yourself and find out what makes you happy and do that. Mm-hmm. Right? Because different times in my life, I tried to be someone else that I wasn't, and you're miserable. Just be real and be yourself, and you'll be happier. The people who are trying to work hard in front of all these people so they'll think, get admiration, it's not happiness. It's like when I teach kids, I try to just be myself and talk to them like a human being.
It's an empty pursuit.
Yeah. So continue that past school, just like every interaction you have with other humans, don't fake it. Like just be yourself. And if it means people hate you, then you don't want to be around those people anyway. And you'll find the people that think similarly as you.
I love it.
I don't know, because like the schoolwork, I tell kids off the record, like your schoolwork doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Your mark doesn't really matter.
It's like, and so
university it matters, but like
you're showing you know how to learn. Yes. That's kind of the best. It's like, if nothing else, show me how stupid it is.
That's right.
Dominate it.
Prove it.
Show me how dumb, like you can get 100%. Then I'll be like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. That's what I told my kids. Like, just make yourself look smart. Don't
try to develop competencies.
Yes.
In something. And so that's kind of the skills question. I was like, what if a kid says it's stupid? Well, like I'm trying to hone you on this skill.
Yes.
Well, what do I mean by skill?
Yeah.
And so communication, I would say, is probably like the number one skill. If I were to like associate something with that word, is like being a more effective communicator, I think is the whole purpose of especially critical thinking and communicating effectively with social is kind of your two ways that you can kind of blend those. But
like it's a long answer, I guess, but just be yourself and don't try to fake it for people. I hate people fake who they are around me,
All right. Well, the lights just went out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hey everyone, thank you all for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. Just wanted to say again, if there are any issues with professional conduct and or you would like to share your own story, experience, or have something you would like to contribute to the show, please do not hesitate to reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com or send a direct message on Instagram to @MrClarkAfterDark. Hope you all enjoyed, potentially found something of use, and of course, please do not forget to subscribe. See you guys all next time. Unless you're scared.